The early morning quiet at Thornhill Farm broke apart with the panicked bellows of cattle. After 20 years of raising livestock in the harsh landscape of South Africa's Eastern Cape, Jack Prescott shot upright in bed, immediately alert. Something was terribly wrong. He snatched the rifle he kept beside his bed, a necessity, not a choice, for those living beside wild territory, and raced outside, not bothering with his boots. A frenzy gripped the cattle in the nearest paddock. They stampeded toward the far fence in a billowing cloud of dust, all but one. Near the water trough, a young bull lay thrashing on its side, its hind leg wounded and bleeding. Standing over it, muzzle and mane already dark with blood, was a full-grown male lion. A cold dread ran through Jack. Attacks on livestock were increasing as drought pushed predators beyond their usual ranges, but this was the first breach of Thornhill's perimeter. The farm's security, electric fencing, motion sensors, guard dogs, had always been enough until now. The lion lifted its huge head, golden eyes locking onto Jack with a predator's focus. It was a mature male, its tawny coat scarred from countless fights, its mane full and dark. But what struck Jack most was its thinness. Ribs showed under its hide, its frame lacking a healthy predator's powerful bulk. This was a desperate animal, starved into taking huge risks. Instinctively, Jack raised his rifle. Years of training took over as he sighted down the barrel. The shot would be clean, a necessity with such a dangerous predator. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then he saw it. A distinctive mark on the lion's face. A jagged scar cut through the right side of its muzzle, splitting its upper lip to expose a hint of fang even with its mouth closed. A scar Jack knew at once. Zulu, he whispered, the name escaping before he could stop it. The lion's ears twitched at the sound, its attention momentarily shifting from its prey. A flicker passed through those amber eyes, a hesitation, a change of focus. For years earlier, Jack had been part of a team that rescued an adolescent male lion from poachers. The young lion was badly wounded, a snare cutting deep into its face as it fought. For weeks, Jack helped tend its injuries, hand-feeding it during recovery before its release into a nearby reserve. They had named it Zulu for its spirit. This couldn't be the same animal. Rehabilitated lions usually avoided humans, reverting to their wild nature. Yet that scar was unmistakable. Back away from the bull, Jack said firmly, his rifle still raised but his aim shifting slightly from the lion's center. A subtle change that meant the difference between a kill shot and a warning. To his amazement, the lion hesitated. Its posture stayed predatory, but its gaze had changed. It studied Jack with an intensity that felt like recognition. The wounded bull kept struggling, its movements weakening as blood pooled beneath its leg. The smell of fresh blood would only sharpen the lion's hunger. Jack had seconds, not minutes, to defuse this. Keeping the rifle ready with one hand, he slowly reached into his pocket with the other, pulling out the emergency radio every local farmer carried. Marion, he spoke quietly into the device. Code red at the north paddock. Lion attack on livestock. I need the tranq gun and the vet team here now. On our way, came the immediate reply from his ranch manager. 2 minutes. 2 minutes might as well be 2 hours when facing a hungry predator. Jack kept his eyes locked on the lion, taking one careful step forward, then another. Remember me, old boy, he said, his voice low and steady. We've met before, you and I. The lion growled, a deep rumble vibrating through the morning air. Its muscles tensed, but instead of charging Jack, it took a step back from the injured bull. Jack continued his careful advance, each step measured and deliberate. He was now 15 feet from the lion, close enough to see its individual whiskers, the texture of its scarred muzzle, the calculation in its eyes. That's it, Jack continued. You know me, don't you, Zulu? At the sound of the name, something extraordinary happened. The lion's ears flicked forward, its aggressive stance subtly easing. It made a sound, not quite a growl, not quite a grunt, that Jack had heard years ago, when the young, injured lion had begun to trust its human caretakers. Then came the sound of an approaching vehicle. Marion and the response team. The noise instantly recaptured the lion's attention, its head swiveled toward the disturbance, muscles coiling to flee or fight. "Easy now," Jack said quickly. "No one's going to hurt you." But the moment was broken. The lion gave a last look at the downed bull, then at Jack, before bounding away toward the break in the fence it had used to enter. Within seconds, it vanished into the tall grass beyond the farm's edge. Marion's jeep skidded to a stop nearby. His ranch manager and 2 security staff jumped out with tranquilizer gear ready. "Where is it?" Marion asked, scanning the area. "Gone," Jack replied, finally lowering his rifle, his heart still pounding. "But it'll be back." "You let it go?" Marion asked incredulously, staring at the wounded bull. "Jack, that cat just attacked your livestock." Jack nodded grimly, his eyes fixed where the lion had disappeared. "It's not just any lion," he said quietly. "I think it's Zulu. The one we rehabilitated 4 years ago." Marion's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "That's impossible. That lion was released over 100 miles from here." "I know," Jack replied. "But it's him. Same scar. And he recognized me." As the team rushed to help the injured bull, Jack couldn't shake the memory of those intelligent eyes studying him, the subtle shift in the predator's demeanor at its name. Lions weren't known to recognize humans after years in the wild, especially not positively. Everything he knew said what happened was impossible. Yet he couldn't deny what he'd seen. Something had stopped that starving predator from attacking him when he was most vulnerable. Something had triggered a memory, a connection that defied conventional understanding of wild animal behavior. As Jack helped load the injured bull for transport, he made a decision that would start a chain of events none could have anticipated. "Marion, I want camera traps along the entire north perimeter," he instructed. "And contact Dr. Wells at the Wildlife Trust. Tell her we have a situation she needs to see." "What are you thinking, Jack?" Marion asked, concern in her voice. Jack stared out at the savanna where the lion had vanished. "I'm thinking we just witnessed something unprecedented," he replied. "And I need to understand why Zulu has come back after all this time." Dr. Elena Wells arrived at Thornhill Farm by late afternoon, her dusty Land Rover bouncing down the access road with familiar ease. As the region's top wildlife vet and head of the Eastern Cape Conservation Trust, she had worked with Jack on many projects, including Zulu's rehabilitation. If anyone could make sense of the bizarre morning, it was her. "This better not be another tall tale, Prescott," she called as she stepped out, equipment bag over her shoulder. Her tone was teasing, but her look was serious. Jack managed a tired smile. He hadn't slept since the encounter, spending the day fixing the perimeter fence and checking on the bull, now recovering at the farm's medical facility. "Would I drag you all the way out here for a story?" he replied, leading her inside. "You once had me drive 3 hours to see an albino springbok that was just covered in dust." Inside, Jack spread photographs on the kitchen table, images of the young lion they'd rehabilitated, close-ups of its unique facial scar. Beside them, he placed security footage from that morning showing the mature lion over the fallen bull. Elena studied the images intently, her professional detachment briefly giving way to astonishment. "It's him," she confirmed, comparing the scar patterns. "But this is highly unusual, Jack. He was released in Addo, over 100 miles north. Male lions establish territories. They don't usually travel this far." "Unless something drove him here," Jack suggested. Elena nodded slowly. "The drought has disrupted patterns. Prey scarcity, competition, habitat encroachment. There are possibilities." "What about recognition?" Jack asked, voicing the question haunting him all day. "Could he actually remember me after all this time?" Elena hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "There are cases of captive lions recognizing caretakers after years. But Zulu wasn't captive. He was only in rehab for 11 weeks. And while lions are intelligent, this kind of long-term recognition of a human after years in the wild isn't scientifically supported." "Then how do you explain what happened?" Jack pressed. "He had me dead to rights, Elena. No weapons, nothing between us. Any predator that hungry would have attacked. Before she could answer, Marion burst in, expression urgent. He's back. North perimeter again. Camera 3 just picked him up. The trio rushed to the security monitors. Live feed showed the lion pacing along the newly repaired fence line. Even through the grainy footage, they could see how thin and desperately hungry he was. He's starving, Elena observed grimly. This isn't normal hunting. He's in survival mode. Which makes his restraint this morning even more remarkable, Jack pointed out. Elena's scientific skepticism visibly wrestled with what she saw. We need to tranquilize him, she decided. Get him medical help, restore his health, then relocate him to a secure reserve. And if he just comes back again? Jack asked. Elena had no answer. Within the hour, they assembled a capture team, Jack, Elena, Marion, and 2 conservation officers with tranquilizer rifles and transport gear. They tracked Zulu using the camera network to a small ravine half a mile from the farm. I should approach first, Jack insisted as they prepared the darts. He recognized me before. It might keep him calm for a clean shot. Elena wanted to object but saw the logic. A calm target meant safer tranquilization for everyone. Fine, she conceded. But at the first sign of aggression, you back off and let the officers shoot. Jack nodded, checking his own rifle loaded with live rounds as a last resort before starting down the ravine slope. The lion was partly hidden in tall grass, but Jack could make out its tawny form, the rise and fall of its rib cage as it rested in the late afternoon heat. Easy now, Zulu, Jack called softly as he approached, using the same tone from the lion's rehab. Just like old times, eh? The lion's head rose immediately, ears swiveling to pinpoint Jack's voice. For a tense moment, predator and man regarded each other across 30 yards of open ground. Then, in a movement that made everyone raise their weapons, Zulu rose and began walking directly toward Jack. Hold your fire, Jack commanded, eyes never leaving the approaching lion. He's not charging. Indeed, the lion's gait was measured, cautious, without a predator's explosive acceleration. It stopped about 15 yards from Jack, close enough to see the dried blood matting its mane from the morning, the prominent ribs showing its malnutrition. Remember me, don't you? Jack said quietly, maintaining eye contact. We've been here before. To everyone's astonishment, the lion made a soft chuffing sound, a non-threatening vocalization captive lions sometimes use with trusted caretakers. It was the same sound the young Zulu made when Jack brought his meals. My God, Elena whispered from the ridge. He actually remembers. The lion took another step forward, then another, closing the distance. Jack remained perfectly still, every instinct screaming to retreat while his mind held him in place. When Zulu was barely 10 feet away, close enough for Jack to smell the metallic scent of blood on its breath, the lion did the unexpected. It lay down, its massive head resting on its paws, eyes still fixed on Jack, posture completely non-threatening. The capture team watched in stunned silence as Jack slowly knelt to the lion's level, keeping eye contact. For several minutes, man and predator simply regarded each other, a tableau of impossible connection across species. Take the shot, Jack finally said, voice steady. He's calm. Make it clean. Elena herself aimed the tranquilizer rifle, hand steady despite her racing heart. The dart hit Zulu's shoulder. The lion flinched but didn't attack, its eyes staying on Jack as the sedative took effect. Within minutes, Zulu was unconscious, his massive chest rising and falling in the deep rhythm of drug-induced sleep. Only then did Jack finally move, approaching the sedated predator with reverent caution. I've never seen anything like this in 30 years of wildlife medicine, Elena said as she joined him, preparing to check vitals. This shouldn't be possible. And yet here we are, Jack replied softly. The exam confirmed their suspicions. Zulu was severely malnourished and dehydrated. He had a festering wound on his left flank that had likely hampered his hunting. Without intervention, he would have died within days. As they prepared to transport the sedated lion back to the farm, Jack wondered at the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together again. Was it mere chance? Or something deeper science couldn't yet explain? What happens now? Marion asked as they carefully loaded Zulu into the transport crate. Elena glanced at Jack before answering. Protocol says we rehabilitate him, then relocate him to a reserve much further away, preferably with a tracking collar. And if he comes back again? Jack pressed. Elena had no answer, and neither did the conservation officers. None had encountered a situation like this, a wild predator forming a lasting bond with a human strong enough to override its deepest instincts, even in desperate hunger. As they drove back with their sedated charge, Jack couldn't shake the memory of those intelligent eyes studying him, the deliberate way Zulu had approached and submitted. Whatever was happening defied conventional understanding, and he felt a growing certainty this was only the beginning. For 2 weeks, Zulu remained under observation at Thornhill's medical facility, a converted barn Jack had equipped for injured livestock now housing a far more dangerous patient. The infected flank wound required surgery, a deep gash likely from another lion in a territorial fight. With proper nutrition and antibiotics, he improved remarkably. News of the extraordinary case spread through conservation circles, drawing behaviorists, researchers, and a documentary crew to the remote farm. Each came with theories, from scientific to sentimental. Perhaps he associates you with food and safety from his rehab period, suggested Dr. Hendrik Venero, a prominent animal behaviorist. An extension of classical conditioning. Or maybe he's simply an outlier, offered another researcher. A statistical anomaly. Every species has them. Jack listened politely but remained unconvinced. Something deeper was happening, something he felt but couldn't articulate scientifically. Whenever he entered the secure observation area next to Zulu's enclosure, the lion would immediately approach the reinforced glass, eyes locked on Jack with an intensity that felt like communication. On the 15th day of Zulu's recovery, Elena arrived with news that changed everything. I'd been through historical tracking data from the Conservation Authority, she explained, spreading maps on Jack's kitchen table. What I found is astonishing. The maps showed movement patterns of tagged wildlife. One track line, representing the pride Zulu was released into 4 years earlier, showed a clear pattern. This pride's territory has shifted nearly 80 miles south over 3 years, Elena pointed out, following the drought, following game. But look at this. She overlaid another map showing water sources and human settlements. They've been moving closer to Thornhill despite other available territories with less human presence. It's as if they've been coming here deliberately. Jack finished the thought, a chill down his spine. Are you saying he's been trying to find his way back here for years? I'm saying it's a possibility we can't dismiss, Elena replied carefully, especially given his behavior when he arrived. The question of what to do with Zulu once he recovered had sparked heated debate. The Conservation Authority wanted him relocated hundreds of miles north. Others suggested a captive sanctuary for study. Jack had stayed quiet, turning possibilities over. Now he spoke his truth. I think he should stay. Elena stared at him. Here? At Thornhill? Unconventional, I know, Jack acknowledged. But so is everything about this. We have the facilities. I have the experience. And clearly there's a connection here we're only starting to understand. The authorities will never approve it, Elena pointed out. A free-roaming lion on private property? The liability alone. Not free-roaming, Jack clarified. At least not initially. The eastern section, the old wildlife corridor we established 5 years ago. It's already fenced to code for predator containment. 500 acres, minimal livestock contact, natural prey base. Elena studied him, seeing the determination in his weathered face. You've been planning this all along, haven't you? Let's call it considering all options, Jack replied with a hint of a smile. What followed was 3 months of bureaucratic battles, inspections, permits, and heated debates. Jack leveraged every connection, presenting the case as a unique research opportunity to study long-term bonds between rehabilitated predators and human caretakers. Eventually, with Elena's backing and a research grant, a 1-year pilot program was approved. Zulu would remain at Thornhill under strict protocols, his movements tracked, his behavior documented. The day of Zulu's release into the eastern enclosure dawned clear and cool, a perfect early spring morning. The lion had fully recovered, his coat regaining its luster, muscles rebuilt beneath his tawny hide. He was transported in a reinforced crate to the release site, cameras set up to document every angle. Jack insisted on opening the crate door despite Elena's concerns. "We've come this far on trust," he told her. "I'm not going to betray that now." With the research team at a safe distance, Jack knelt beside the crate, speaking softly through the ventilation openings. "New home, old friend. Ready to see it?" He unlocked the mechanism, swung the door open, and stepped back several paces, not in fear, but in respect for the wild nature still at Zulu's core. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then Zulu's massive head appeared at the opening, amber eyes blinking in the sunlight as he surveyed his surroundings. With deliberate caution, he emerged fully, muscles tense for fight or flight. Jack remained perfectly still as the lion took in the environment, scenting the air, ears swiveling. When Zulu finally turned his attention to Jack, every observer held their breath. With measured steps, the lion approached, closing the distance until barely 10 feet separated man from predator. There, Zulu stopped, regarding Jack with that same intense focus. "Welcome home," Jack said softly. What happened next would be played on nature documentaries worldwide. Zulu took the final steps forward and, in a gesture defying conventional understanding of wild predator behavior, pressed his massive head against Jack's shoulder in what could only be recognition, even affection. Jack carefully raised his hand and placed it on the lion's mane, feeling the powerful muscles beneath, the wild heart beating strong and steady. For a moment stretching into eternity, they remained connected, two beings bridging a divide most believed uncrossable. Then, as if satisfied all was as it should be, Zulu pulled away and turned toward the open savanna of his new territory, trotting away with purpose but without haste. At the crest of a small rise, he paused, looking back once at Jack before disappearing into the tall grass. The research team erupted in excited chatter, cameras clicking frantically. Elena approached Jack, her scientific skepticism finally giving way to wonder. "There's no precedent for this," she admitted. "We're in uncharted territory." Jack nodded, eyes still fixed where Zulu had vanished. "Maybe that's where we need to be. Questioning what we think we know about the boundaries between humans and wild animals." Over the following months, Zulu thrived. The team documented his hunting, exploration, and gradual relaxation into a natural rhythm. Trail cameras captured him drinking, basking, even playing, behaviors like any wild lion. But one behavior remained extraordinary. Whenever Jack approached the observation point at the territory's edge, Zulu would appear, sometimes within minutes, as if waiting. He would approach the boundary without hesitation, greet Jack with that gentle head press against the fence, and often spend hours simply being near him as Jack worked or read, the barrier between them necessary but somehow insignificant. As the 1-year pilot program drew to a close, with papers published and international attention focused on the remarkable case, the question of what came next was answered not by bureaucrats or scientists, but by Zulu himself. The eastern boundary of his territory had always been left open to the adjacent wildlife reserve, a test of whether he would leave if given the chance. For an entire year, he never did. His tracking collar confirmed he remained within Thornhill's boundaries despite having the freedom to return to the wild. He had made his choice. And in doing so, he had forever changed our understanding of what is possible between humans and the wild creatures with whom we share this planet.